And we're in and we're live. Hi guys, how are you all doing?
Hi guys.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good. You all right?
This week, we're doing the Patterson Gimlin footage of 1967 of an alleged Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever your poison. Obviously, with me this week, Mystery Machine, the usual suspects, myself, Steve, Jamie, and Damian. Okay, so should I kill a bit of time just so you guys come in, man? Hey, Nelly, how are you doing? Okay, so I suppose there's not many people who haven't seen this or aren't aware of this one, guys. You know that it's pretty much well-travelled. Documentaries around the internet, many people have seen it. It's still not proven, also not disproven piece of footage, depending upon who you listen to and who you pay attention to. So first of all, we'll go off with a brief history of Bigfoot. A little bit of a nod to their channel there. You notice that? The brief history of Bigfoot thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
There you go.
Like and subscribe.
Bit of a, yeah, absolutely. Bit of Steve staying quiet. Fascinating.
I'm always quiet.
Okay, so Native Americans have been seeing creatures, large bipedal, hairy creatures, for generations, thousands of years. They've been going by many names: Omar, Sasquatch, Dugway, Ginesqua, Sonusqua, for many years. Europeans, as they started to make their way across the continent, started to see them, and the Native American Indians would refer to them as Sasquatch, which pretty much translated into hairy giants. And a few key dates, really. I suppose the first one would really be April the 16th, 1924, the Battle of Ape Canyon, where miners of that gorilla-like giant creatures attacked them in some woods near Mount St. Helens. The miners ran into a cabin for safety, but the creatures threw rocks down onto the block cabin all night, and the miners called them the Mountain Devils. Over the years, there's been other reports that have been similar to that, where objects have been thrown, depending upon the demographics of the area. Some of that type of activity is more associated with different types of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, again, demographically. There's 4 types in North America and Canada. Of course, because this is the Patterson Gimlin, we're dealing with the Type 1, or the Patty, as it's now known. So the Type 1 Sasquatch is what we're dealing with. But that kind of thing, whether it's been through territorial or in conflict because of food sources, but the things being thrown like logs and rocks has been reported many times and throughout history. But the Battle of Ape Canyon, April 16th, 1924, August the 27th, 1958, is pretty much sort of acknowledged as being the birth of Bigfoot. A gentleman called Jerry Crew, is it you? Yeah, was working on a construction site in California, and he found some 16-inch footprints in the mud. And pretty much the media latched onto that and referred to it as whatever was responsible for leaving those footprints was called Bigfoot. And in North American culture, the terminology Bigfoot sort of overtook them being referred to as Sasquatch. It was still referred to as Sasquatch, but mostly known as Bigfoot. There's reports of these kind of things all over the world, though. You have the Alma, the Yowie, Yeti, Mande Barung, Orang Pendek. There's many hairy bipedal creatures, like seen all over the world, all over the different continents. And the legends of those are also told by the indigenous populations of the relative continents. So large, hairy bipedal creatures have been being seen for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So culturally, it's not just the remit of North America and the Bigfoot craze that's come about because of from the 1950s on. Anyway, we end up in October 1967, and we end up with Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin at Bluff Creek. So that being said, we'll find out a little bit of information about the gentleman concerned from some of the other guys. Who wants to go first? We'll go with Roger Patterson, I think, first. So Roger Patterson, who's got Rog?
That's me.
Take it away, Steve.
Hi guys. So Roger Patterson, born in 1933, died in 1972 of stomach cancer. He was an amateur boxer, and he was a very well-respected rodeo rider as well. And that's how he met Bob Gimlin through rodeo shows and things like that. Excuse me. During the 1960s, he developed an interest in Bigfoot after reading an article by Ivan T. Sanderson about Bigfoot and abominable snowmen and things like that. He also wrote and self-published a book, mostly of newspaper clippings, but there was at least 20 pages of never-before-seen drawings, diagrams, and interviews with people that had seen Bigfoot. He didn't make much money from his book, but the money that he did make, he put towards searching for Bigfoot. Excuse me. In 1962, he visited Bluff Creek and talked to a host of Bigfoot believers. That started getting his interest really sort of picked up into it. And then in 1964, he returned and found some fresh Bigfoot prints, and that absolutely blew him away. He was so excited, and basically that was it for him. Patterson invested thousands of hours and thousands of dollars searching Bigfoot and Sasquatch areas and territory, and he also funded the Northwest Research Foundation. And his book, Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? That was his book. And that is Mr. Roger Patterson.
A little bit of a doodah on Roger Anthony Michaela Louise Patterson there. I might have made some of them names up, but Roger Patterson nonetheless. And then moving on to Bob Gimlin.
Mr. Gimlin, that'll be me. First up, say hello to everybody that's been putting a message. Bazza, Nelly, Elizabeth, everybody. Right, so Bob Gimlin. He grew up in Yakima, near the Yakima Reservation. When he grew up, he was always around horses. He roped horses as a child. He hung around a lot with the Native American children from the reservation. And I think that's probably where we might have even heard the first stories about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, etc. Like Steve said, he was a rodeo man. He was a born rodeo man. Even as a young boy, he was in the rodeo, and that's where he initially met Mr. Patterson. When he he used to race caravans and chariots and stuff through the mountain passes and things. He was considered a bit of a daredevil, to the point even that Evel Knievel actually tried to get him to join one of his shows, Daredeviling, that he was putting on, but Bob refused at the time. When he was 18, he joined the Army Reserves. Shortly after, he joined the Navy and then did 2 years of Korea. During that time in Korea, he actually was involved in quite a serious car accident. The driver of the vehicle was killed. He was badly injured in the passenger seat. His face got pinned against the front of the vehicle, sort of thing, and he had to have quite a lot of reconstructive surgery to his nose and things and everything. A lot of plastic surgery on his nose and what have you. So that was when his Navy career ended. He was released on medical grounds. He's saying that it was shortly after that that he first sort of made contact with Patterson, and Patterson sort of appeared one day with a like say a cast of a Bigfoot footprint. Bob says he wasn't particularly interested. Patterson kept talking about these things. He showed him lots of documents and first-hand accounts, and they talked about it for 2 or 3 years on and off. But Gimlin always says he wasn't really interested, but it was his mate, so he sort of pandered to it a little bit. Then one day, Patterson appears and says basically that he's heard about these footprints down in California, and would he go? And Gimlin thought, what? I'll go down for the weekend, and have a nice weekend with his mate. Gimlin is a proper cowboy. Whenever you see him, he's always wearing the cowboy hat and cowboy gear. He was regularly would break horses for a living. At the time, just before the incident we're talking about this evening, He was truck driving, doing a bit of roofing, making a bit of money. He claims to have been quite a excited hunter through his time. He's hunted elk and bears, etc., over the years. Really, after the incident, we'll talk more about how he's reacted to it. But really, after the incident, he really didn't talk in public about Bigfoot for like 35 years. He was roundly mocked for it. He would have people apparently driving up to his house and like banging his door in the middle of the night and shouting, "Oi, Bob, let's go hunt Bigfoot," and then like tearing us out of there before he can say anything or before he can get out, sort of thing. His wife was a bank teller at the local bank, I say, and she used to get lots of grief for it, to the point where she basically begged her, the husband to stop talking about it, and they agreed they wouldn't discuss it. Even though he did keep in touch with a lot of Bigfoot researchers, like John Green, who's a Canadian researcher, and then he was really sort of dragged back into the Bigfoot scene when he went to the Willow Creek International Bigfoot Convention in the early noughties. Dmitry Bayanov, a Russian researcher, and René de Hinden, a Swiss researcher, approached him with a lot of the evidence that they'd been gathering. And they really wanted Patterson, who was known by many of the researchers, but like I said, had never really spoken out loud, to come and speak at this convention. Bob says initially he was really not happy about it, but he thought, okay, maybe I should. And he says after he spoke, he talked for about an hour. The audience just got up and gave him a round of applause, and that just sort of like released 35 years of weight off his shoulders. That all of a sudden he felt like sort of like accepted, like he wasn't being generally considered to be a liar, which he'd been called to his face more than once over the years. And then, he has gone on really to become a bit of a media darling. I consider him, he's sort of like he's the Bob Lazar to aliens, that, he's the Bob Lazar to Bigfoot sort of thing. He's got a similar sort of reputation that he never really has made any money out of this. He sold his sort of rights to the video for like $10 because he just wanted rid of it. He was never he never spoke about it publicly until the early noughties. He's now considered, though, really like a celebrity within the Bigfoot world. And many people consider him the only person to have ever actually, honestly seen a Bigfoot that's still alive, sort of thing. And consider him to be one of the most credible witnesses. And to be honest, whenever I've seen him in anything, he really does come across as honest. And he does many interviews now. I know we'll talk more about hoaxing and things later. But he does lots of interviews now, and he has made decent money since the late early noughties, doing conventions and interviews, to the point where he's actually an executive producer for a new movie that's coming out next year about a young man who loses contact with his friend, and when he goes to try and find him, he finds that his friend has been hunted by an unknown ape-like creature, a Sasquatch, and he's actually going to appear in the movie as like a Stan Lee type of cameo role. So he's really become like the centre of the Bigfoot community now. That's it.
Interesting.
Very interesting character. Yes,
he is a character, most definitely.
But you do tend to find the stories of a lot of these people that are, I don't know, I suppose relatively credible witnesses seeing incredible things in the face of ridicule by their peers. It becomes, and they're not gaining anything from their story. You'd think if anybody hoaxed it, they'd just, tell us and go back to having a normal life and not, there's that guy that tried it on.
I think once you tell a lie, mate, it's quite hard to tell the truth.
I don't know if it meant all that extra attention goes away.
Well, it did put pressure on his marriage. And his wife has talked about it since, saying that this did put pressure on their marriage. She hated it. She hated the attention. She hated people coming up to her in the street and going, "Oh, you're the Bigfoot." Is Bob crazy? He says he was considered a bit of a daredevil, like I said. But then afterwards, he wasn't trusted. People thought, okay, is he fearless or is he crazy? And people started to doubt his word. It affected his life. He says for 35 years, this ruined his life. you know, which is why I make that analogy between him and Bob Lazar, who makes similar claims, that this isn't something he wanted to come out with about. It was something that happened to him, and all he's done is told the truth.
Yeah, the persistency of 35 years of telling the same story with all the flack for it. Yeah.
So why were they
absolutely? So it moves us on to number 4. Why were they there? Is that you?
I guess that's me. Yes, myself. Well, why were they there? As their story went, the early afternoon, I think on Friday, October the 20th, 1967, Patterson Gimlin were riding on horseback, generally, I think, northeast, upstream from where they were, on the east bank of the Bluff Creek in California. Sometime between, I think, about 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, they came to an overturned tree with a large root system in front of them. When we rounded it on the horses, there was a log jam and a crow's nest kind of left over from the flood of 1964. They spotted a figure behind it simultaneously as they were rounding it, crouching beside the creek to the left, or standing there on the opposite bank. Gimlin described himself as in a mild state of shock after seeing that first figure. So really, they were just generally out riding in that area when they came across it. Although obviously he had some interest in searching for Bigfoot. So I would assume that their journey out there was at least with the intent of perhaps coming across something while they were out there.
There had been reports, and there were footprints found by some loggers in the area that Patterson had heard about. So he decided to let's go down and find him. But when they got there, they couldn't find any footprints. There'd been heavy rain and lag, and they couldn't find anything. So they just decided to wander around for the weekend.
Yeah, and he seems to coerce Gimlin into perhaps going out there on the hunt for this strange creature, leaving these footprints, really.
Yeah, he said he was making like a homemade documentary about cowboys and old miners and Native American Indian tracker.
Yes, yes. Which was a bit of a ruse to get him out there, in the least, which we'll probably come back to, I think, later on when we're discussing it generally in terms of Gimlin changing his story about Patterson over the years, didn't he, at one point?
A little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got that's sort of like what they're there for. As Damian just said, they saw something. So the event is basically Patterson's riding ahead of Gimlin at the time. Yeah, he's got the reins of his arse in one hand. He's got a 16mm camera. We'll go into the camera a little bit later on briefly in the other. And then apparently Patterson's, after they've done some filming, because the actual the footage that you actually see of the Sasquatch Bigfoot is something like 50 odd seconds, something like that. I think 53, 54 seconds in its entirety. But there is, I think the released footage might be something like 16 to 17 minutes of them riding around the hills and through the woodland and stuff. So he's off and on. He's filming Patterson. He's put the camera away in the saddlebag, and then the horses began to react like to Winnie, and then they could smell what at first they thought was a skunk. So a bad smell started to fill the air, and then the horses started to kick about in fear. And like Damian says, it's then that they spotted what they said at the time to be a 6 to 7 foot beast walking up the creek. Patterson asked Bob Gimlin to cover him as he jumped off the horse and grabbed his camera again, dashed ahead, forward. I'll play a little bit of it in a minute. Dashed ahead and forward, and crouched himself on behind some logs to stabilise the cameras he was recording, and started to record. And Bob Gimlin was immediately behind him, and he drew his rifle.
He actually gets really offended about that.
Yes,
People
he
say
does.
that he drew his rifle to sort of like and took aim. He says he didn't. He was used to hunting. He drew his rifle just in case.
Yeah,
and never raised his rifle to the animal.
We'll come back to that because that is a matter of contention for the point. So that's a good point, well made. He said he didn't fire a shot, and he just watched the creature amble off into the distant trees. They then hurried back to a campsite to get the equipment to make plaster casts, the prints that they'd found. And then apparently they rode on to a variety store about 30 miles away from Bluff Creek, where they intended to ship the film off to Patterson's brother-in-law. And then Roger Patterson called the Times Standard newspaper in Eureka to describe his encounter, and that began the worldwide propagation of the story around the world, and the footage as being evidence of the existence of Bigfoot. So that's what they were there for. He was making a documentary film. He'd convinced Bobby Baby, that that's what he was doing. I feel like I've watched him a lot. I feel like I can sort of talk about him. I can call him that. He won't mind. Our Bobby
like
Baby.
that,
Oh yeah, we're very close.
He's a cowboy. He's probably quite heavily armed. You might want to call him Mr. Bobby Baby.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be coming over to see me anytime soon. If you do, Mr. Bobby Baby. But that's the understanding we got why they were there. So briefly, the camera in the film. Again, don't want to go too much into geekism about this, but it was a Kodak K100, which I'll show you people, because we got that kind of technology here at Mystery Machine. I don't have that on my own. I only have that when these guys are here. Magical.
We do have the technology. We can rebuild him.
We will rebuild this stream. So we got the Kodak K100 there. Looks relatively up to date to me. It's got a Cine Hectar 2 lens, which you can get in 15, 25, or 63 millimeter single or triple turret lens setups. So you might see them, kids, and if you do see them in the future, they might have 3 lenses, or 3 if you're from Northern Ireland. But the one Roger Patterson was using just had ein. Use 16 millimeter film. That's contained on 50 or 100 foot spools, which gives full recording time when you're recording on full crank or full wind, as they like to call it. I like to call it full crank because I've got a little bit of a devilment in me. It gives you 1 minute and 10 seconds of recording time, given that the footage that we see is around about that kind of length, 54 seconds of which is showing this creature. It makes sense. No true focus on it. It uses a triple crosshair for sort of like parallax adjustments, where the lines of the light converge for focusing within the retinal plane or the recording medium. And using, I've never heard of this particular bit, so I'm going to read it word for word. Using 1R mono per film for single claw and sprocket cine cameras. That means nothing to me, but that's what it's using. Okay, so that's the camera that our Roger Baby. I want to be careful with the babies; I'll start confusing them. That Mr. Patterson was using on his hand cranked Kodak K100. Which can record anywhere from 24 to 62 frames a second, and somewhere twixt between those two film speeds. Apparently, it was going at full crank, which is why we get the just over 1 minute video footage. So that would have been a full spool. There has been people that have made claims that there is even much longer spools. Much longer footage that's out there that shows other things going on that we will discuss a little bit later on as well. I'm not so sure about that one. But the camera in the film, so it's a Kodak K100. You probably get them cheap now these days, kids. So we move on to the footage itself.
I was going to say, with the camera, do you know where there was claims that back where Patterson had got it from?
Yeah.
So apparently, according to a chap we're going to talk about a bit later, who's made several claims about this thing, but I thought it was worth putting there when we were talking about the camera, that Patterson actually borrowed it from a camera store in Yakima.
Yeah.
Borrowed.
Never gave it back. Didn't pay for it. Borrowed it.
Yeah, borrowed it.
Didn't give it back, and only gave it back when a police warrant was issued.
Yes, because he thought it was going to clink.
Yeah. I have looked into that, though. I can't find any evidence of that, other than the claim.
Other than a certain gentleman making these claims.
Then we'll come back to.
We will come back to that guy and maybe one or two others. So yeah, but I like it when you bring up things like this, Jamie. It keeps it absolutely red hot. And
mate, I've done my research.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I'm thinking of ending the stream. You're going to show us all up. So we move
No,
quickly on
I just read Wikipedia. Wikipedia's awesome for this sort of thing.
Wikipedia is awesome, especially when it's people like me that write all the articles.
Oh, great, it's not true then. Okay.
So moving on to the footage. What have we got? PG footage has to be the best evidence, so you can see the muscle flex beneath the fur. No way, that was a man in costume straight up. We'll come to that. Don't you worry about that, Ryan. Got that covered, brother. So the footage. Everybody has seen the footage. I'm going to show the footage because I'm like that. We are like that. That's just the way Mystery Machine rolls. So
Nelly, I always do my homework. You should know that.
So always, we all do our homework, don't we, Steve? Anyway, move.
Damian, watch a YouTube video.
He loves it. Is it?
No,
Right,
just,
listening.
I'm zoned out. Probably, I'm just absolutely knackered. Long day.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
long week.
enhanced footage. Yeah, we've all seen this. So enhanced and stabilized.
Yeah, it definitely needed the stabilisation, didn't it, from the original footage?
Yeah.
I'll play it again because we
Rockers
like that. Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. I'm going to play it again because it's free. It's all free to you people in the side chat. Okay, there's some outside, some the other side of it. It's not all of it, but the general gist. The important frames. I think that's frame 350 right in the middle there, where it actually turns around mid-stride and looks. And various claims as to why it turns around to look. If you see in a second, that there, right at the end, is a famous frame 350 mid-stride, arms out and all that kind of like thing. Hello, April. How are you doing? I'm going to play it one more time because this is even freer. The more I play it, the cheaper it gets. Famous footage. Okay. And I totally agree with Damian. It definitely needed to be stabilised, and who Jimmy Firkind, it needed it.
Although, going back to the design of the camera, you can almost kind of see why perhaps it wouldn't be the easiest camera with the size and shape of it to get a stable image when you come up on something unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
Patterson was apparently showed by the owner of the shop specifically how to make a wobbly, blurry shot. And I'm like, why would you need to do that when you're running across rocks, trying to desperately get as good a shot as you can with a camera that has no zoom?
I wonder if it's the same kind of thing, as it'll make it look sort of like actiony, because in those days, and even before, many people have seen an effect, and you can recreate it these days by using various mediums, where you deliberately blur the lens, or rather filter upon the lens, especially when you're recording female actresses, to give them like a glow. You would use like Vaseline or oil. So 1920s, 30s, 40s actresses would have that kind of shine and that like far away mystique kind of look. So lots of old-fashioned sort of techniques to make your film look more movie-like.
Under the eyes.
Yeah, rather than home recording. I mean, even in those days. So was it a hint towards and knowing again, of course, like he said, he was making a pseudo documentary about a cowboy, an Native American Indian tracker. Was he trying to get the best kind of, in those days, back in the day, y'all kind of special effects, as it were, perhaps? I don't know.
As well, about the blurring effect. We all know from the faked moon landings that cameras weren't very good back then. Poke, Dave. Poke.
I know. I knew what you're doing.
But no, seriously. When we see all these UFO faked videos that we see nowadays, they're always out of focus and things, the faked rubbish ones. But the reason for it is that if you blur them a little bit, it covers up a lot of sins. It's like glossing over a crack in your house. Covers up a lot of sins. Having a little bit of blur, a little bit of wobble, makes it look more real, and it covers up, the zipper. You can't see the zipper at the back because it's a bit blurry.
Well, while we're covering that kind of thing, I'll highlight one or two things and make one or 2 points, seeing as I were talking about the footage. I'll quickly just highlight frame 350 that I was referring to before. This has sort of become the archetypical image that they show of Patty mid-stride up Bluff Creek that we've all come to know and love. So there we go, frame 350. Patty turning to look towards the camera. There's various reasons as well, or rather alleged reasons, as to why Patty is just walking away and acting the way that she is. And given the fact that upon looking at the footage, what you're seeing is what appears to be breasts and mammary glands, pendulous mammary glands,
Massive
on the creature. You can say you say boobs, you say that's cool. Big old boobies on this creature that's just striding up the creek. Or if you speak to Mr. Bobby Gimlin, like I say, I know the guy pretty well, it's a crick. But whatever's your poison. We just call it creek over here because we invented the language, but apparently it's a crick. So as this beast is, I've just lost a lot of subscribers saying that. As this beast is walking up the,
see him dumping out now.
I'll start calling it a crick again. I think start walking up the crick. So a very famous image there. So one or two things that I want to say, so the guys can make or pass comment on it. So I'll quickly go to my notes. Now there's a few things what stood out to me over the years of looking at the footage and various manifestations of stabilization or digital enhancement or whatever. And the not just going off the gate, as I saw Ryan mention it, and Ryan's a cryptozoologist, but the other things which I'll briefly go over is I'm mentioning the gait is that it's got a confident gait, it's got a confident walk as it's moving up the creek. Its strides are regular. You don't see any signs of it losing any kind of balance or wavering or any kind of strange movements as if there's some kind of discomfort or unfamiliarity with moving if somebody's in a suit. So, confident, regular gait, confident strides. Also, there's a couple of strides that it makes during a few frames from, I think, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 5, something. I forget exactly now off the top of my head. I'm not a human computer. But it's where she looks towards the camera, which turns to her right, as we look at the footage, which is in the direction of the camera. And that kind of movement is she turns from a torso rather than just from the neck or the head. The entire torso comes round, which sort of like suggests, alertness, and also possibly limited mobility of the head due to the neck structure. That kind of thing. Also, when she's turning, you see her open her arms or spread her arms, which is like a natural and instinctual way of increasing stability. But that's, like I say, that is done instinctively rather, and not showing any kind of sign of effort or clumsiness, which would expect for somebody to be walking in, dressed up in an outfit, or it's just perfectly natural, fluid kind of motion.
You think with him wearing a mask, do you think wearing a mask, his visibility would be slightly
hindered,
obscured? Yeah. Particularly looking down. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I've gone to fancy dress parties and worn silly, costumes and things. You can't really see particularly well. The other thing I want to make a point is there's 2 points on the video. A lot of the videos that I've seen, or people have said that like this is what he really wore, and like it was wearing a gorilla costume. The face is wrong. The face they don't look like that on a lot of the people who are saying this is what it really was.
No, I will bring the face up in a minute.
But also the arms are too long. The elbow seems to be in the right place, but the arms are very long. So if that is sort of like a prosthetic or something,
I've got some comparison photos which will show which is a made-up alleged sort of. We think this could be the skeletal form of a Bigfoot to a male adult gorilla to the actual patty that's in the PG footage. I'm going to call it PG footage because we like that here at Mystery Machine. But there's some good points, and we'll come to them actually, Jamie, because I like that kind of thing. And just to finish off what I was saying, which is, so I had to make a note of this so that I didn't say it in a really weird kind of way. And now that I'm reading the words, I've wrote it in a really weird kind of way. But in the like I suppose you call it the toe off phase of walking, the sole of Patty's foot is completely visible. And you look at it by human standards, a human sole, it's too large in comparison to the height of the creature. There isn't a longitudinal arch. That's typical what we get in a human foot, and that comes in view. The hind part of the foot, I suppose you'd call it. I shouldn't have bothered writing this down because it's just confusing me. But the hind part of the foot, which is formed by the heel bone, protrudes really far out as well, almost as if somebody's wearing flip-flop kind of things. It's the proportions and the anatomy of it, of the feet alone, sort of like facilitate the work of the muscles in powerful movement, powerful long strides. When walking. So, like, I don't know, you suppose you accelerated striding, increased propulsion, and for maybe weight bearing because of the sheer size of the creature too. And that's like I say, just looking at the foot or looking at the feet. The movements are in harmony as well when you're seeing it walking. It's like I said, it's very well balanced, and the steps are repeated and uniform in between each step. Not staggered or careful placement of feet because they're walking around and don't know the ground or trying to look out of a mask, as you said, Jamie, which is quite correct, and making sure where they place the feet. I think Ryan will be able to back me up on this, but it's basically called a muscular synergy, which is where a combined operation of a group of muscles to create fluid movement, which is natural and instinctive. And I suppose the last kind of point is because it is man-like and bipedal, its walk, and Ryan did touch on this in the side chat, it will resemble a man. It will be there will be some kind of resemblance to the gait of a human being. But the movements, when you look at the movements of the body, of the hips, of the thighs, and you see the musculature and it moving and rippling under the fur, it suggests that the muscle and fiber density is much denser. It's much stronger than the human being would look given the height, and that the walk is actually much swifter. We'll come to the strides and the size of the feet and stuff like that in a minute, but the ability to move, especially in that kind of terrain, much faster than a human being could move. So I just thought I'd bring up those points just to bore the side chat to death.
One thing I've thought of as well, actually, with relates to the footage quite well, is obviously the breasts and the fact that if you were hoaxing a Bigfoot sighting, would you choose a female or would you choose the bigger male to do the sighting of Bigfoot? I'm thinking you'd go for the bigger male. It's just a technical detail that you wouldn't.
Supposedly, Patterson was fascinated with a story related to Bigfoot from when he was a child. It was I forget the name of what they called them, but it was an old Native American story that was related to female Sasquatch. So the debunkers say that's where that came from. That's why he went with a female, because that was the stories he knew.
Yeah. Again, with Jamie quite rightly mentioning the head. That's about as there's been various sort of like renditions of so-called, analysis of what the actual face will and the head actually look like. There is something that is even missed these days on modern gorilla suits and modern interpretations of gorillas and primates, is the sagittal crest. And a male adult gorilla will have a sagittal crest on the top of its head. And Patty has one, which in itself is unusual, because Patty is, after all, allegedly a female Sasquatch or female Bigfoot. But you can see the sagittal crest on the head. That is left out a lot. It's one of those small little intricacies or details that just seem to bypass a lot of filmmakers, even these days, let alone in 1967. And even to the extent of, as Damian said, having breasts and a sagittal crest, if he was going to research making a suit to fraud people, and he was going to go to the extremes of thinking, well, I'm going to make sure it's a female, because, as Jamie quite rightly pointed out, he was sort of like, not obsessed, but he was well aware of, legend of female Sasquatch and so on, to make it look as female as possible. So include the breast, but why include the sagittal crest? And when these are not predominantly known to be on primates, female primates, but the Patterson Gimlin footage does show the sagittal crest as well, of other things which we'll come across in a minute.
If you think about the practicality, right? If you think this is a hoax for a second, and we think about that's got to be made, so like you're talking about, that bit, the head would be obviously there. It would stop just above the a couple of inches above the head. So that would have to be padded out somehow. You'd use foam or something like that, which would make it heavier. You've also got, I'm looking at around the eyes and things as well. This would all have to be padded out. If this was something that was manufactured, something that was made, it's not a plastic mask, is it? It's not a thing. The fur comes into the cheekbones, which isn't common for these sort of masks. And again, for the images that I've seen people going, oh, this is what he was wearing. The whole thing, if it was a manufactured mask, is completely different to anything I've seen, but mainly would be incredibly complicated because of these things, like those details that you've just mentioned. That why would he put it in? Because it would make the thing more cumbersome. It would make the head, it would make the mask wobble about, sort of thing. It would have to be secured. Maybe that's why you couldn't turn the neck.
You'd need George Lucas's makeup and special effects, wouldn't you, from Star Wars to do it?
The shoulder areas where it comes right up, see that it comes almost just under the ear, sort of thing. That would be in line with the human on the cheekbone, sort of thing. Again, that would all have to be padded out. This would be incredibly heavy.
I think even at the because that is a really good point, like Jamie. I mean, even contemporary filmmakers were well aware when it came out, and statements were made about the Disney studios and various other people, allegedly. If you can find the people who made that suit and who managed to fake that film, let me know, because I'll give them a job straight away.
Well, Disney said they're the only company in the world that could have done it, and they couldn't have done it. And like I say, there's certain things that have come to light about, like I say, like the great apes and primates and stuff, that weren't known then, and certainly they might have been known to some paleontologists and anthropologists and so on and so forth, but out there to a cowboy.
Had the mountain gorillas been found by then?
Mountain gorillas had been found by then, yeah.
Yeah, that was the 50s, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then your pandas were they not the 1890s or something like that before they found the pandas?
Yeah, they were considered cryptozoology before that. They were considered to be fake.
So I will quickly show, because we like that. I keep saying that, but it's because it's true. There's no propaganda on here with the Mystery Machine. No holds barred. So let's quickly rock this comparison thing that will do. which I'll show you. It's sort of like a before and after kind of thing, but without the before and definitely without the after. But okay, so I don't even know why I said that. But so on the left we've got a composite skeleton that Professor Jeff Meldrum sort of like concocted, I do believe. I've got to be careful what I say because I know Ryan's in the side chat, making me paranoid. But there's the one on the left there is the one that Professor Jeff Meldrum concocted about what he thought Sasquatch would, should, could look like. And in the middle, we've got a gorilla. And on the right-hand side, obviously, needs no introduction, we've got Patterkins. So we've got Patty on the right, we've got the male gorilla in the middle, and on the left, Jeff Meldrum's interpretation of what a Sasquatch skeleton might look like. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out, which other people are obviously only too aware of. And I'll highlight that photo, I'll show that one. And that certain areas of the anatomy don't match up.
I was just looking at the ass.
Yeah, I've got a problem with the backside as well.
Well, again, if that's a suit, that's heavily padded, which again, heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Again, now I've added those green lines because I have got the capability of going onto the computer and doing things in straight lines. You'd be amazed how advanced Manchester is. But where the green lines is as I've started off in the various boxes, are the lower edge of each box where each thing is supposed to match up, and it doesn't. So basically, where the bottom of the jaw is, or the bottom of the face line, so on and so forth, as much as it can do it, as well as the hips, where the knees are supposed to coincide, so on and so forth, and everything is out of. You can see that it isn't in alignment, and especially more so on Patty. So the composite skeletal form that we see on the left that Jeff Meldrum come up with is pretty much due to sightings and whatever other bits you can glean. Obviously, the one in the middle is a male gorilla. That doesn't need to be explained. But the Patterson footage, or the Patterson Gimlin footage, suggests that the body's certainly not that of a gorilla. It's similar to a gorilla. By the way, the reason that there isn't a human male or a man as a comparison there is because he isn't even remotely in the same kind of characteristics. It doesn't even match up in the slightest. So it would be completely irrelevant and a complete moot point to add a human form in there. So if you could imagine, the human form would be on the extreme left. Not only would none of the red boxes match up, it goes without saying that none of the green lines for comparison would match up, because the human form is so massively removed away from that. And the only thing that sort of like makes them similar is the fact that they're bipedal and they've got a skeleton, pretty much. So that's why you're not seeing humans on it. But you can see all the points that don't match up, and that can is actually rather large, isn't it? Now that you draw my attention to it. Patty has got back. There is no doubt about that.
I'll just go back to the point that if that's faked, if it's a suit, that's all got to be padded out with foam. It would weigh a ton. And then if you go back to the way he's moving,
yeah,
and this is supposed to be a hot summer's day.
Yeah, it's October, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he describes it as being a warm, sunny day, Gimlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That guy was just sat around waiting for them to come around the corner. He would have been a sweaty Betty.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And on top of which, when you bear in mind the way that you see the ripples of the muscles when the creature moves, you haven't just got for that kind of thing. It would almost suggest you would need to have hairs glued onto every single part of the anatomy for the hairs to move with the musculature the way that it does, rather than a complete overlay of some kind of synthetic thing with hairs added afterwards to look right. The padding, even if it was padded, it wouldn't move in comparison to the rest of the body. It's
possible with padding to do that. And to do, but I mean, it's
not in 1967. It's not.
Well, maybe not in 1967.
Very
but it's
true.
incredibly difficult, is the point, and there's no creasing. If that was padding, like sections of foam, say like in the shape of the muscle area in the muscle, where those two, there would have to be separate bits of padding if you follow me. So you'd like an armadillo shell sort of thing. You see no creasing. You see no where those things, where the foam comes together, the fur would crease, the over top layer would crease, and there's none of that. It doesn't hang, so there's no hanging or looseness to the suit. So it must be filled out with something if it's fake. There's none of that. There's no visible sign here that I can see that it is faked.
It doesn't look like a guy in a suit so far.
If it is, it's an incredibly expensive suit, and I don't know how they did it.
Again, just for like point it out, because obviously we've mentioned the breast before, and it brings back nice memories. No. I'll just don't pull your face, Damian. All the jokes are free. We'll put that up there. So again, that's frame 350.
Calf muscles on it though.
I'm glad you brought up MK Davis there, Ryan, because we're going to talk about MK Davis a little bit later on. Sorry, Damian, what?
Good point, Steve. Yeah, it does look like
calf muscle
you can see in there.
Yeah.
The thing is you see them flex, you see them contract, you see them elongate as it walks. If you actually pay attention to the footage, you see it just like they do on a human, just like they do on any living creature, which is using muscle mass and strength for propulsion or for ambulation. You see it. You don't see a guy clumsily stumbling across a dried up creek bed because he's wearing a big heavy suit that he's not used to wearing. But
the way it walks as well. Sorry, go on.
Say it again, brother.
I was just going to say the way it walks. I watched a documentary where they tried to get somebody of a sort of similar size to try and walk how the Bigfoot's walking, and we would have to be bent at the knees all the time to be able to do the same walk that Patty's doing in the footage.
Yeah, there's also another thing is that when lifting up and you Patty bears the soles of her feet is almost like a 90-degree angle, and humans don't walk like that. You also see the flip forward of the lower leg as the foot goes out, almost as if it's going to grip, like primates do before they pull forward to move forward for the next step. Human beings don't walk like that. Thank you, Ryan. And that's before you start to get to things like the mid-tarsal break and other things. I think a lot of people
just in that comment.
That's quite funny.
I just looked to read what I see in the comment.
Yeah. We're going to see Dave blush in a minute.
Yeah, he, when it comes to cryptozoology, he does keep an eye on me. It has to be said. We seen frame 350, didn't we? So we've sort of like all seen the footage. We've got an idea about the footage. So we'll move on to now. Steve, you've looked into this a little bit because me and you spoke about this sort of semi briefly, and that's the possibility that there were others watching from the trees. And this has come up. I've seen this myself, that there were other Sasquatch in the footage, in the PG footage, that were watching from the trees.
I did have. I'm sure I had some footage of that, and it could still possibly be on my computer because I watched the whole of the Bob Gimlin footage, the sort of 16 odd minutes or whatever it was, and I think it's a couple of anything up to possibly a minute and a half before it cuts across to show Patty. You can see 2 to 3 figures standing in the tree lines, and they're big, and that's about it. They sort of go back into the tree line.
From before the thing. I mean,
it's on the same reel.
Before. On the same reel, so it wouldn't necessarily been filmed just before.
Up to about 2 minutes before you see Patty. Yeah.
It's on the same reel. It is containing the same footage. It's briefly moments before and even an element midway through in the background where allegedly there's one in the tree line. To me, it looks like perspective and the change of a shadow as cameras panning.
Yeah,
That's what it seems to be like. That's what it seems like to be like to me. But there is another one, is it not? The one that's earlier in the footage, Steve, which makes it look like there's actually two, a taller one and a smaller one, stood in the background.
Yeah, because they're standing out of the tree line as well. A good few feet out of the tree line, and you can clearly see that there's something there. Yeah.
Just to clarify, this wasn't recorded at the same time. It's just on the reel before it, because obviously we know that Patterson apparently, as soon as they saw it, took his camera out of the saddlebag.
It was when
testifies to that.
It was when it would have been Bob Gimlin on the horse, and it was when he was Patterson had the. I'm just trying to think of sort of how it was. Was it before or?
It's caught just before you actually see Patty.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing was,
I'm assuming he's panning the camera at some point. You just catch it. It's
an exact that footage. Yeah.
It's true that they were down there basically looking for 3 Bigfoot. The report that dragged them down there was that there'd been footprints of 3 Bigfoot found. A large, a big Bigfoot, a little Bigfoot, and a medium-sized Bigfoot.
Yeah, a mummy, a daddy, and a baby.
A daddy and a baby Bigfoot, potentially. So they were looking for 3. There's also sort of animals.
Sure, they weren't bears.
Well, bears.
Sorry,
bears do a similar thing to this, though. Bear prints are quite easy to identify. To be honest.
I wasn't being serious. It's because you said Goldilocks and the 3
Mommy
bears,
bear
mate.
and the porridge was lovely. Bear prints are really easy to tell apart. I mean, it's basically a large circle with 3 like dragging marks at the top. But anyway, the point being though, bears will do something like this. They will actually let themselves be seen by a person if there's a child area.
Yeah, distraction technique. Yeah,
so they will
birds
go,
that do that. Yeah.
It's a distraction. So there is a theory that that's possibly why the Bigfoot allowed herself to be seen, was because the baby was maybe closer to Patterson and Gimlin than she liked, so she let herself to be seen to draw them away from it, sort of thing.
Yeah. We'll come back to that again in a little bit, because of the theorists and all that kind of thing. Because it's good to get one, especially the fact that there was allegedly 3 of them. So we'll definitely come back to that, because there's a couple of points I want to make, or rather that MK Davis made. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But so others watching from the trees, basically, there's 1 or 2 people that sort of like propagated that was actually going on. There's no extra footage that suggests that. There is allegedly extra footage, which we will again sort of encroach upon in a few minutes, to go back to what Jamie was saying. But it's at the beginning, just before you see Patty, and then midway through the footage again in the background as Patty's striding up the creek, just before frame 350, I believe. So just before the infamous turn as she turns towards the camera, you allegedly see shapes in the trees. Now, as Steve said, he's seen it. I've seen it, and I've seen other people's interpretations of it. I don't know if you 2 guys have seen it. I'll bat it over to you 2 to see if you've actually seen it.
Yeah, but I have to admit, I didn't think it was real. But
no, I mean, seeing what somebody pointing out allegedly people in the background, or
I just thought they were shadows. I have seen. I saw a video and they sort of highlighted it round and things, and I couldn't see what they saw, sort of thing.
Yeah, Damian.
No, it wasn't very clear it wasn't clear what it was. It could easily be shadows when the camera's panning, or it could be the silhouette of a figure. There wasn't enough really to conclusively say.
Excellent responses. So we may as well use that as a segue to go back to the 3 Bigfoot thing. So what we'll do, and this gets up a few cryptozoologists go, as it were, it winds them right up the Genoskua, and that's Blood at Bluff Creek. Okay, so I'll do a little bit of this before I bang it back to the guy. So allegedly a film came to light in 2006, which showed supposed unedited footage of what we'll call the Patterson Gimlin encounter, if you like. And apparently Patterson and Gimlin were with like a group of other guys, 6 apparently, so there was like 8 of them in total. And they were slaughtered 3 Bigfoot. They slaughtered 3 Bigfoot, believed to be a family, as I said before. And these 3 Bigfoot were sort of like claimed to have been digging in the sand in the creek or huddled around a fire is another one that's like thrown out there. When all of a sudden there's like a fusillade of shots ring out from the tree line. One of the Bigfoot is hit and is killed. Another one rushes to the nearby woods. And the third one just walks slowly away. Now, the third one being Patty, that we see in the Patterson Gimlin footage. And the shots were still ringing out. Now, to quickly just go back to the film minute, the Kodak K100, when it used its 16mm film, where it used I'm going to have to go back to the notes because I can't remember what that was called. One arm mono per film for single claw and sprocket. Now I know single claw and sprocket is the older fashioned. It's like you get the capstan rollers in tape heads and so on and so forth, and allows you binary channels to give you 2 channels, which, like left and right in stereo audio. In video cameras, as far as I'm aware, that would mean that you would have a video signal and you would have an audio signal. So the possibility of capturing audio was there on the Kodak 100, the K100, which was a bit of a leap forward for technology in that time period. It would have been a mono soundtrack and 16mm video film because of that. But there isn't a soundtrack. The soundtrack isn't there. And it's because of the fusillade of gunshots. You hear the gunshots. Again, these are claims made by a particular individual, MK Davis. Excuse me. And apparently they were still taking shots at Patty as she was walking away. And the shots were happening from close to the camera, and there were points during the footage where you see flashes of light. That's supposed to be the muzzle flashes of rifles being fired as Patty's walking away. And that's the reason she turns to look at the camera, not so much because she's being filmed and, realizes that she might be in with a share of $250 for making it onto You've Been Framed, but more because she's being shot at. Now, on top of which, they're saying, right at the very beginning of the footage, apparently as well, there's a Bigfoot corpse. Now, I don't see anything like this in this, but right at the very beginning, there's a Bigfoot corpse, which is like right in a hole at the beginning of the. Apparently, you can see a Bigfoot corpse in the hole. I've never seen that, but it's in the first few frames of the footage. And the reason they say that Patty isn't running away and she's just ambling up the creek, even though she's being shot at, is because she's actually been hit. Once in the shoulder, I believe, or something like that. I'm pretty sure somebody in the side chat will shoot me down that I'm wrong about that. But once in the shoulder and the other one in the leg. So she's been hit in the leg, and this is one of the reasons why she's not running away. Now, we have got a picture which I want to show rather. Apparently, the entire video footage is 111 minutes long. And this dude, MK Dave, and that's a lot of spools, given that they only run for 1 minute and 10 seconds at a time. And MK Davis owns it. And your mate actually... Pardon?
You wouldn't film an encounter that long. You wouldn't. No. You wouldn't stand there respooling every 1 minute 10 seconds for over an hour. I'm sorry, no.
No, where's the dead body?
And David Pilardi's supported this for a long time. Actually, he got behind it. Just wanted to say that. This is it. I don't know, but there is a picture which will show you.
They came out and flogged this video everywhere they could get it. They were desperately trying to make money. Patterson was trying to make money. So what did they do with the dead body? Why didn't they present it and back up their story? What did they do? Eat it? Were they very, very hungry at the time? So they just ate the body? And they thought, oh, no, we shouldn't have ate that. That could have been evidence.
Yeah, well, surely you'd at least take a part of the body back, wouldn't you? Like the foot or the hand or the head. Yeah, one of probably those 3. They're going to be those are the parts you're going to be able to sell probably and make money from.
Yeah, where's the body? If this is even remotely true, where's the body?
As far as that goes, Bazza, they didn't stay over here in the UK. We call it an ISO rating as opposed to ASA. But because it's grainy, you would expect it to try and gather as much light as they can. So probably what you would call 400 ASA, something like that. But 16 mil was supposed to be good. As you say, it's supposed to be high quality footage. I believe he was using the 63 millimeter Cine 2 lens on this Kodak K100, so the footage should be good. But we actually all know it's not great, really. But there was a picture allegedly which shows a couple of guys that were with this MK guy, and they've got blood on their hands after committing this massacre. I'll show it you. To me, it doesn't show a great deal, but I will show it because that's what we're all about here at Mystery Monkeys.
Yeah, Gordon did just say they should have kept the foot, which tickled the hell out of me. Instead of taking the head back, they should have taken a massive foot.
Yeah.
That's just amusing.
No, I think you're quite right to be amused. I like it. I'll dig out these guys.
Shot deer or something, couldn't they?
I'll dig out these guys' names. One of them's called a very unfortunate name of Bob Titmus. Bob Titmus and Dale Moffat, and the dog that you can see in the picture is a dog called White Lady, and that's apparently the one. Is what you're seeing at the bottom right, as you can sort of like see there, is allegedly a red pool of blood. I'm not sure I'm wearing that, and again the bottom right exactly. That's what makes me want to do, Jamie. Sorry, Damian, and the lump of the skin. But that's supposedly a still or a picture from the from this so-called extended video footage, which has never been released, by the way. Nobody's seen it. There's just one or two crappy pictures. There's just one or two crappy pictures. The other thing I want to say is a lot of other people have ascribed the red hue to the videos and the background as if there's rivers of blood flowing at Bluff Creek because of this massacre, and that's not the case. It's the type of film they were using, the emulsion that they were using. It's just got a red hue to the film. It's nothing to do with the fact that it's blood. But the trees in the background look like a red. It's a very orange tint to it, and so people that sort of added to the myth about this so-called massacre at Blood Creek. But thoughts, guys?
Oh shit!
I say doesn't there. It says quite a good comment. It's just a good comment.
Low resolution still image. Why wouldn't you release the extended footage?
Make a fortune.
You would if you had it, wouldn't you?
This is it, isn't it? I mean, MK Davis has allegedly he's got it all, but it's not been released. So I jump on it with you two. If you've got it, you'd show it, wouldn't you? You would show it.
Yeah.
I don't think the train looks right. I mean, Cryptid's podcast just make a point there that about the red clay and it's abundant in Woodsby. If you look at the train in that photo, it doesn't look like a creek. And to me, it just doesn't look right. It looks like a river. Video, if you know what I mean. I know it's supposed to be probably the other angle, but
it does look like a riverbed, though. A little bit.
Yeah, but it looks muddy rather than stony to me. It just doesn't look right.
Put it back up.
Please.
That's
better.
And thank you.
I know, yeah. Put it back up.
So demanding.
There we go. There it is.
Doesn't look right to me. The tree line doesn't look right. It just doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking off the top of my head, but it just doesn't look right to me.
Can't tell, can you? You can't really tell. It's
you need an unfiltered version because obviously the hue to the red, like you said, doesn't.
No, I wasn't stating that it was 400. I was using 400 as an example of what would give grainy footage, Bazza. Higher, absorbs light quicker, but gives you more grainy footage. I'm a photographer. I do know how it works. I was using it as an example more than an absolute. But that to me, that doesn't suggest anything at all. The blood on the ants thing, I'm not seeing anything what ties that in with being even remotely associated with it.
It's not again, just as far as I'm concerned.
No.
I see what Jamie's saying now. Yeah, I get that.
Allegedly as well. And by the way, I don't know if I said this before, but after the footage, or after the end of the so-called footage, the patty we obviously see walking up the creek bed makes it back into the trees. Was found, hunted down, and killed afterwards as well. So the massacre was a true massacre. The one that got shot allegedly near the fire, the one that ran to the tree line, there was still a fusillade of shots going off, and then Patty got chased down, hunted down, and killed afterwards. So that's what.
If these things are that timid and scared of humans generally, and that's why we've got so few true sightings of them, I don't know what they get shot at, get hit, and then what they don't run away quicker than we can and disappear. I don't know. It just no.
She's moving pretty freely if she's been shot.
Yeah,
She's moving pretty.
Yeah.
If she's so injured she can't run.
Yeah,
she's still moving pretty freely.
Well, which frame was she supposedly shot in? Because I don't remember seeing any kind of.
I never knew anything about
before
being shot at.
Yeah, exactly, Jamie. It's allegedly before when the first shots ring out, when they're first seen. That's why you don't see the first so-called Bigfoot. The first Bigfoot being so-called killed and shot and killed, is because the film isn't going then. So she's already been hit by this time in the shoulder, and very conveniently.
It is very convenient. Yeah,
as we said.
Where's the body?
Telling the story.
I'll be back 1 second, guys.
It's going for a poo.
I just had to open a window. It's got so hot with the computer going today. I hadn't realised. And yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No. So telling the story. Again, I just think this sort of like is arcing back to Bob Gimlin, and now Patterson did take a lie detector test without us going into too much about the validity and the accuracy of polygraphs and so on and so forth. He did take one. I'm gonna have to have a look at my notes. As far as I'm aware, he did. Okay, so in 1968, allegedly, he passed the lie detector test that was given by, it just says, a reputable New York City polygraph expert, conveniently. So no names or any kind of credentials or anything, but he passed a lie detector test in 1968. And he never waited. Pardon?
Or did they just report that he did? This is, if no one can ever confirm it, it might as well have not have existed.
That is the thing. I mean, he didn't change his story though, right up until the day he died.
No,
he didn't change his story.
Gimlin hasn't changed his story either, and he's still knocking about. So,
and that was the thing about Gimlin is, he does like tell his recollections very vividly and in depth, and like Damian said before, if it's going to give you that much infamy or not hassle isn't the correct word, but then there's got to be an easier life is to refute your own claims maybe. But he said it caused him so much toxic fame. I think he called it like a form of toxic fame, because it become infamous rather than famous.
Like I said, people would just shout at him in the street and things like this, and people started to think. I mean, for him particularly, because he was like a bit of a ranch hand rodeo guy, a bit of his word meant something, and all of a sudden people thought he was crazy. That hurt him. I mean, I've seen him talk about it. It hurt him that people thought he was a liar.
That's why a lot of Bigfoot sightings probably go unreported. To be quite honest, same with a lot of UFO sightings. Again, the fear of ridicule. When it's not really that crazy, is it, to think that another hominid species might exist on this planet that we haven't discovered yet? I mean, if you look back through the historical record, there were multiple hominid species living together in Europe, wasn't there, for a long time, until the Neanderthals supposedly died out, 20,000 years ago, 25? They've now got the oldest Neanderthal remains, I think, from the southern peninsula of Spain.
I think Neanderthal died out a lot longer than that. Are you thinking about the Phoenicians?
It's like 25,000, 30,000 years.
No, it is. It's about, it is,
Okay.
Yep, in Gibraltar, the southern peninsula of Spain, there's a cave where they found some remains that are dated to that sort of era. And then you look back in our recent past and you realise there's that Homo forensis, isn't there, that they've discovered the fossils of in Asia. I just, and then you look in our past at dinosaurs and go, well, they were massive, ridiculously tall, ridiculous weight animals. Is it really that difficult to imagine a hominid that's a bit bigger than us that exists that we haven't found?
You just got to look at Gigantopithecus and Dinopithecus. You know, it's not too difficult to see that it. I don't want to go like Dinopithecus and Gigantopithecus being the possible ancestors, or rather throwbacks, or rather things like Gugwe or Genesqua are throwbacks from them particular. They have that lineage or ancestry, as it were. But you have just got to look back at the ancient primates and see that it's not too far removed. Just want to pick up on something, as I said there, about the most common rifles. Then were Winchester 30-30s, which have a very low hit power. Ballistically, they're not great. Ballistically, they're not great at all. And had Patty been hit by, say, for instance, like you're saying, a 30-30 caliber or 30-30 round, then you'd sort of almost still expect a limp or a bit of an ouchie. But a big, heavy creature. We're going to size briefly in a minute the possible dimensions. But that is a good point that Baz has just made. The most people, frontiersmen, if you like, or people that will be out and about riding, they're going to have it strapped to the side of the saddle. It's likely to be an underlever 30-30 rifle, so not something that's going to drop it like a dangerous game type of caliber. So that's
Gimlin said he carried a Winchester.
Absolutely. So also telling the story, or rather sticking to the the telling the story kind of thing before we kind of move on, is Bob Gimlin and his little embellishments or changey mindy episodes. Jamie, do you want to give us a bit more on him?
Well, first of all, I said that they fell out as well, Gimlin and Patterson, immediately after this happened. Apparently, Patterson wanted to go on tour. Gimlin didn't. So Patterson hired somebody to pretend to be Gimlin and basically pushed him out of the equation, and Gimlin felt pushed out. So they didn't speak for like 5 years. Patterson basically, or he was phoned by a friend on Patterson's deathbed, and basically Gimlin was told that he wants to apologise, he wants to say sorry. So he did go up and saw him. And Patterson was still trying to say, I was, that as soon as he gets better, as soon as I get better, I've got the resources now. We're going to do a proper expedition sort of thing. But he actually died the next day, and that was the last time Gimlin saw him. Talking about embellishments, Gimlin has talked about that sometimes he believes it was faked. Sometimes he talks about that he believes he was an unwilling accomplice, that Patterson only invited him along to be a witness. A witness that people would trust, sort of thing. So he was unwitting, he didn't know what was going on. So if it was faked, he wasn't in on it, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now, he doesn't talk about that. He did have an interview with Chris Packham in, I think it was 2008, where he did say that it is possible. Because I didn't believe it for a long time. I thought it wasn't fake, but now I'm old enough. Maybe I understand that maybe it could have been faked.
Or technology's caught up that he now thinks it could be fake with today's tech. But
yeah, but then when he's
in the technology back then.
But when he's at conventions and things, he doesn't. He is very much no, this is 100% a believer. I could see the muscle movement. He was furious apparently when he first saw the video, because he said, I could see so much more than that. Which is understandable. If you're at the zoo and you pick your camera up, even with modern technology, and stick your camera up at something, you go, actually, I've got to zoom in loads to see where I can see them with a naked eye. And look at the moon and then try and take a picture of it, sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of thing. You can see far more with a naked eye. So Gimlin was like, that's crap, when he first saw the video. But now, supposedly, Gimlin, like I say, does change the story. He does also throw in what other people believe, so other theories. He just throws in. He initially didn't say anything about it being female until somebody else pointed it out to him. He talks about that he thinks Sasquatch maybe was seen on purpose now. He talks about that he thinks maybe Sasquatch was there or Patty let them see them on purpose because she was sort of like saying, "Here I am," like it was some sort of communication. So he regurgitates other people's opinions and theories quite a lot in interviews, and he changes his mind on whether he thinks it was actually genuine or not, seemingly quite regularly. That theory about if it was hoax, though, I genuinely do believe he would have been an unwilling accomplice, sort of thing. That I believe he believes. I've seen a few videos of interviews and people have tried to analyse his body language, and they do talk about areas where he doesn't seem as sure about what he's saying, and he stops and thinks about things. And when he's telling parts of the story that are definitely true, that he's very confident about it, and he's got a style that he repeats himself quite a lot. When he'll say a detail and he'll repeat it again with a little bit more detail and say something else. But then when he actually talks about seeing Patty, he doesn't do that, as if he's not so sure, sort of thing, or that he's almost like, I'm telling the story, but this might actually not be true. But even when they've done that, though, when he talks about whether Bigfoot's true or not, even the skeptics agree that he believes it. He believes in Bigfoot and he believes he saw it. I just wonder whether those doubts are there. But when he's at the conventions, with the people that really believe, and they're all giving him a round of applause, he doesn't raise those doubts.
Okay, so that bearing, of course, bearing all that in mind, and what we've been speaking about for the rest of the night, does that mean he's a bad witness, or as we sort of?
I think he just talks to the room.
But I mean, were we not sort of like sort of mentioned the fact that it's the human nature for embellishment on the last stream when we were talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case? So that is it's the human. It's the human condition then, perhaps.
But in that case, his story doesn't actually change.
No, it doesn't.
His basic story of what he saw doesn't change.
No.
So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw a few things. Sorry, go on, Damian, brother.
If anyone is, Patterson knows. Gimlin's either under the illusion that it's been real for most of his life, or it was real. If that makes sense. If Patterson put him in that illusion. But it was been a very complicated, convoluted, orchestrated event to do it.
Patterson was a genius if this was faked. And by all accounts, it doesn't sound like Patterson was a genius.
No.
No, they couldn't afford it either.
There is that.
So to point out one or two things in reference to the way that they've sort of judged it. There's different techniques that they use, but one particular one is using identifiable structures, constructs, natural occurring features to gauge distance, depth, perspective, size, all that kind of thing. And then there's a 26-inch piece of wood that's the first started to work on. That's easily identifiable in a lot of footage, so therefore in many of the frames, which they used as reference for what we call perspective and distance scaling. And then by using that, also using other objects, background trees, boulders, that kind of thing, which were then measured at a fixed distance from the camera, given the purported or rather reported distance that Patterson and Gimlin were, and the location that they said they were at. So, like I said, at a fixed distance from the camera, for also what they call, it's pretty much like depth scaling, which
trigonometry.
It's a form of trigonometry, but it's to guesstimate or take an educated guess at the height of the creature and that kind of thing. which was when it was walking slouched, or rather leaning forward with that particular gait, was 87.5 inches, which, because I've not got a computer for a brain, is 7'2" according to that up there. So 87.5 inches, 7'2". We, like I say, using the scaling method with forward lean and gait, without approximate that overall height of 94 inches, which is 7'8". A human stride is approximately 34 inches for a 6 foot high individual with an 11.5 inch foot length. And it's a 45-inch stride for somebody who's 7'8", or a biped with 7'8", with a 15.5-inch foot length walking with that particular gait. And they measured using head lengths, or the head proportion to the body on any primate or bipedal. And a human head length is between 7.5 to 8 heads tall. So in reference to your own head, so on and so forth. Whereas Patty is 5.9, so her head is proportionately much larger in reference to her scaling than a human head is. Again, we mentioned the sagittal crest before. Allegedly as well, in 1976, I haven't seen this, but I've heard that this exists, that the FBI made a statement that I'll have to read this one again. They stated that it was not identifiable as that of any known creature on this continent. So read into that what you will. And a couple of other points before I throw it out to the lovely, delicious panel. Is one or two things. Is of course like that. A lot of people have dismissed the film as being a prank because it featured a man which is like pretty much in a really impressive costume. It has to be said, given the time period that it was taken in. And of course, this brings us on to people like, and I think Jamie might want to talk about this a little bit without throwing him under the bus, kind of thing. Philip Morris, and because he claimed that he sold Patterson. I'll leave that for you to talk about if you want to.
I've watched one of the videos about it today. It's interesting.
Yeah, so we'll dive into that one. It's worth going down that way. The points, got one or two points that I wanted to make, or should we just move it? Are we done with that? Okay, so validating things that are sort of like overriding kind of validating points, or just a few of them, gloss over a few of them, is that the actual event that Patterson and Gimlin witnessed, and obviously recorded the footage that's become so famous now, has occurred in an area that was known from the First Nations, the Native American Indians, for seeing Sasquatch, for seeing this giant, hairy, bipedal creature, or a form of higher primate, if you like, that mostly was called Oma. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and like I say, even the different tribes, culturally, there would be legend of large hairy men, whether again it's Nunusquas, Sunusquas, Sasquatch, Janosqua, Gugwe. These go back hundreds of years in all the different types of Native American tribes all over North America and Canada. There were actually contemporary sightings of the same kind of thing as the thing that we see in the Patterson Gimlin footage from the 1950s. Contemporary reports of exactly the same kind of thing being seen from the 1950s onwards. In this specific incident, it's seen. We do see the Bigfoot, we do see the Sasquatch, we see Patty. It's recorded on film. So it's in an area where there's been reports for hundreds of years. It's also in an area where reports almost mirroring it, even though they predate it, have been reported, and we actually see video footage of the alleged incident, if you like. There was a smell to it, so the Bigfoot smelled. So more than just visuals, there's different senses coming into play and different dynamics. Why somebody emulate, or rather try to fake a particular event, would go to the extremes of wanting to create a smell, I don't know.
That's a detail to be fair.
Yeah,
the Bigfoot was sensed by the horses. That's the thing, Damian. It's a nice little bit of detail to add into it. To report, I mean, I don't suppose it's too much of a big stretch to imagine that horses might be spooked by seeing something, but the horses responded. That they whinnied to seeing the Bigfoot in there. Now, a trackway of at least 10 prints, I've led to believe, and I might have to go up my notes for this one because I can't remember totally off the top of my head, but I believe, and these tracks were cast and preserved for other people to analyse. So these 10 tracks that were taken on the day have been analysed. And apparently, by the way that they've been analysed, show flexible primate-type feet, animated. They're not just imprints. So that alone says that the footprints they've not been faked. They've been left by an ambulatory body with weight, given the displacement of the ground that it's been treading upon. Like I say, Sasquatch bloody. The apparent animals film, like I said. Now, this footage has been analysed all over the world, and that's not going to come as a surprise to anybody on the panel, and certainly not to anybody in the side chat, by American, Canadian, European, Russian, Asian, cryptozoologists, climatologists, paleontologists. You throw an ology at the end of the name, they've done it and they've looked at it. You've got biological and mechanical evidence of it moving. You've just got to look at the video to see the biomechanical evidence of it moving along. The motion, the musculature, the structure of it as it's moving along, and the way that it flows, it sways as it walks, the arms swing naturally and fluidly, and breasts on it, and nothing like that appear technically on any kind of gorilla suit or anything like that. It predating it or at that time, for movies or carnivals or circuses, I don't know, or anything like that. I suppose one of the last ones is there were a lot of highly funded attempts at trying to recreate it that get forgotten about as well. There were a lot of people that put money into trying to emulate what gets seen both back then and even now, and fall far of the mark. They fall far, it just doesn't look the same. And these are film production companies as well. A lot of them have been involved in trying to do it, and they've not been able to emulate it or copy it. Or recreate any kind of form-fitting outfit that will look like the Patterson Gimlin footage does. And I suppose the most of the hoaxes and the people that have made claims, it's fallen apart what they've said under any kind of critical investigation or questioning. It falls apart. Whereas Gimlin's and Patterson's, for the most part, is the only constant that we have as a narrative. Everybody else who claims to be involved or to have added to it, it falls apart under scrutiny. And so I just thought I'd throw that out there. Don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, that goes quite nicely into what we was talking about, Philip Morris and this Bob. Why do I always get names that I can't say? Hieronymus. Yeah. So, right, Philip Morris owns a company that creates costumes. Back then, he was creating a lot of costumes for he created gorilla costumes for sideshows and magic shows and things like this.
Yeah.
He was selling them for about $475 at the time. Quite a lot of money back then. He claims Patterson got in touch with him, wanted a suit. Initially, he couldn't pay for it, so Patterson apparently asked him to send him the suit, and if he liked it, he would either send it back if it was no good, or he would send him the money. And this Philip Morris said, "I'm not doing that. I'm a businessman. Don't talk ridiculous. How about you send me a check, and I won't cash it until you tell me whether it's all right." And he goes into this whole spoil about really putting Patterson down, to be honest, and making him sound like he found out later that he had no money. He also claims that Patterson then basically got 7 people to actually invest to get $1,000 together to fund this little expedition. Those 7 people then never saw any money later, and they sued. I can't actually find any evidence to back that claim up, but that is something that Philip Morris claims. So he says he created the suit that we see. I've seen interviews with Philip Morris talking, and he's holding up an equivalent to the suit.
Can I just show a picture of this suit, Jamie, while you show
it? Because the face in particular is just nonsense.
Oh dear.
And that is the Harmonious guy. I've just said his name wrong. They did a recreation for the Discovery Channel. And they recreated the thing. One of the things he actually says was that the model or the suit he sent to Patterson didn't have breasts, and Patterson added them. But he added them with the same. How did he get the material? How did he get them to match? If you follow me, how did he get? What did he do? Ask for some more fur? I don't know. But I see one thing was saying that the Discovery Channel is the guy, the producer. Apparently, the producer saying was, "Go. Are the breasts going to bounce as he walks?" And Philip Morris goes, "No," and he goes, "They wouldn't have done for the suit either." So the producer was sort of like, "Oh well, this is a load of rubbish, isn't it? You can see they bounce in the video." But then apparently when they actually did it and they tried it, they did kind of bounce because the material moved. You know, remember we were talking about how the skin and the fur doesn't move and doesn't crumple? There's less. Apparently, the fact that the breasts bounced was this movement that you can't see anywhere else on the suit. The video that the Discovery Channel then put together was crap.
Yes.
If I'm honest.
Yeah, it was.
This guy, this Harmony, I can't see his. Why can't I say his name?
Hieronymus.
Because his name's not David Smith. He's got a different, harder to pronounce name.
Bob. When Bob, I could say Bob. When Bob, he didn't go public until 1998. He said he'd been carrying this secret around for 27 years, and he just had to admit it. He's 5'10" for a start.
Yes.
There is a point though, actually, that Gimlin did say that when he first saw the creature, the Sasquatch, he thought it was around 5'10" to 6 foot.
Yeah, we did.
And he changed the story later, and he said, no, actually, I think it's closer to 7 foot. He changed the story. But he does explain that. He says, basically, I was stood on top of a horse looking down on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I actually come off the horse, I could see when looking up, and I could see it, but then it was further away, so it was harder to judge the height. But this guy is about 5'10". You'll also notice the head area that we talked about on that mask. Apparently, this guy as well, he has a glass eye. And apparently, Patterson asked him to bring a spare glass eye, and they put it in that one side that was on the side of the video was shot. So he turned. Apparently, you see a little glisten of the glass eye, and apparently that's the glass eye. A lovely little detail that Philip Morris threw in there. These guys, obviously, though, wouldn't have known each other. They met after.
Surely the glass eye went in whichever one of his eyes he'd lost, because he'd got the other one, hadn't he?
Apparently, yeah. So, Philip Morris, though, he used to apparently go to conventions and things in the 80s and stuff, and he would talk about how he made the suit for the Patterson video. But he never actually publicly went out and said it till 2002, which I think is incredibly suspicious. But he says he never came out publicly because he was worried it would harm his business. That doesn't make sense, because he was talking at conventions and magic shows and magic conventions about how he'd made the suit. He was talking to his customers about how he'd made the suit, but he didn't tell anybody else because he was worried it would harm his business. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
It would only help your business to say, look how amazing that suit is I made. It fooled you all.
Yeah.
I did that. Please buy my suits. So considering his business, it makes no sense that he kept it secret. And also, to be honest, when you watch him in videos and things, he's a laugher and he's a joker. He very much uses it as an advertising thing. He did make gorilla suits at the time, it's true. He's been able to offer no physical evidence, like a receipt or a bank statement to show the deposit, or any of the. Apparently, he was in communication with Patterson for like 6 months regarding this. No evidence, even though the video became hugely famous within 12 months of it happening. At no point did he think that, to save something. It's a terrible businessman if he just throws all his documents away. But he could have provided physical evidence for me if he'd have wanted to. He could have gone to his bank and gone, can I have the information from a deposit I made in this time period? And he's never done that either. But he has made a very nice little business out of going and doing talks about how he debunking the Patterson Gimlin video. To me, I think this guy is a chancer.
Yeah.
I think somebody has probably come to him and gone, "Did you make that costume?" And he's gone, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
And then the Discovery Channel have said, "Do you want to come and do a documentary?" He's gone, "Yeah, okay." And then some other bloke has gone, "Yeah, that was me. That was local to the area. I did it. I walked it. There we go. I'll put it on."
Yeah, and it can't be ignored that you don't need to be any kind of visual effects expert to look at that picture there and the footage and say, you know, come on, really, seriously, it's not even remotely the same.
No. The face area is completely different. There's no blending. You see how that thing's got like a big mustache and beard sort of thing. The real Jim didn't have that. There was sort of like a blend where you could see the hairs coming off the cheeks and things, and no.
The colour's also vastly different, and in this image, it's a much redder, redder brown, whereas in the footage,
it's supposed to be a reproduction, obviously, that he did.
Well, yeah, but why wouldn't you use the same colour fur in a reproduction that you? I don't know. Just a point. It's very different colour-wise, isn't it?
I think it's a very, 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 very valid point, brother. On top of which, this picture's taken 30-odd years after the event, and this suit is still crap.
Yeah, and it's had 30 years to develop it yet, and they still haven't got one that looks good enough to do the job for something 30 years previous. Okay,
well, we've only got a couple more points to go over, but I suppose, we are cracking on a little bit. So one of them, a lasting legacy. So basically, you know, what I'm sort of getting at, or what we're getting at here, me and the Funky Monkeys, what kind of damage or help, what has it added to the lore of Sasquatch, of Bigfoot, of hairy bipedal creatures like the Yahweh, the Alma, and various others, Orang Pendek, so on and so forth? Has it helped? Has it not? Is it this video? Obviously, he's always refuted, and then it's always accepted. It's debunked, and then it's no. Actually, it looks like it could be real. What has it done to our understanding, or whether how likely people are to believe in Bigfoot or Sasquatch being real? What do you reckon, guys?
It's kept it alive, hasn't it?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that I did a video as a little advert for this last week, looking at some of the YouTube videos that are out there. I think people have been faking and making ridiculous, stupid videos ever since about Bigfoot. This one is a Canadian guy. It's the Something Lake video. It's supposed to be one of the top 10 videos of modern day of a Bigfoot, and he runs more like a gorilla on all fours sort of thing. And it is just a guy in a gorilla suit. It's the stupidest video, but it gets hundreds of thousands of views. And that's what goes on. This is probably the second most, after UFOs, this is probably the second most faked kind of YouTube video where people basically produce a video to get hits, trying to con somebody, trying to trick you. And that just muddies the water to a point where, genuinely, before going into the show, I've never believed Bigfoot was real. I believe this was faked because of the amount of rubbish I've seen over the years.
Because of the ridicule of the topic, and yeah, it's very similar to UFOs in that sense. And I don't know if you go back to what we were doing about David Pleaders and the missing 411, and that case where someone was it Keith Parker, was it, where he's the kid's taken off, and then someone sees it, doesn't like the family. They see
the Key family see a large airy guy,
running away. Well, I mean, and then you combine that with the fact that there's actually DNA that's been analysed by universities in America from supposed samples of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, hare, this, that, the other, and they've basically proven that it is an unknown primate species that comes back from the DNA sequencing. Well, there are no primates in North America as far as we know, but they found DNA of a primate, an unknown primate in North America. Fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's very likely, and it might be more than one different type of hominid in different parts of the world on different continents. It doesn't have to be the same species of hominid, does it? That account for all of these different sightings of different giant humanoid creatures that seem to exist in every culture on every continent as well.
My only issue really with the whole Bigfoot story is a country like the United States, where that is now nature is encroached upon in all the all of it sort of thing. The population has increased so massively. They've cut down most of the woods now. There's very little, not as much nature as there was. I know down the centre of America there's still very vast areas of wilderness, but that we've never found a body. We've never found a skeleton that can be verified. That would be my only issue.
Well, I think
maybe these are creatures that are clever enough they bury their dead. I don't know.
Well, you've only got to look at elephants. It's not too long ago we first started to find elephant skeletal remains, but we've known about the existence of pachyderms for many years. You've also got when the Native American Indians or indigenous populations of the various continents that have reported seeing their version of what is a Sasquatch, if you like, they would see families of these, big groups of these. Now, as time's gone on and we've come into the modern era, and as the profligation of urban dwellings have started to encroach upon certain land and you've had deforestation, the sightings are actually going up. But the groups that are being seen are actually smaller. So what you're getting is what you would expect in the natural world when creatures are losing their habitat. There's less of them being seen because they're losing their natural habitat, and there's less of them around because of it. And the only reason that the sightings are going up is not because there's more of them, it's because we're encroaching and taking more and more of their land. Foxes and creatures like that, when their natural food source isn't there. I mean, we sort of like just assume that they might be carnivorous, but there's evidence to suggest that they're omnivorous. But foxes will come into the town and the urban areas and start to raid bins as their natural food sources start to dwindle. And a lot of the sightings of these hominids are actually being seen in urban areas now, not just on the tracks and the trails in Washington State, where a big portion, like Northwest California, Washington State, Canada, areas like that, where a lot of these where Sasquatch are being seen. It's actually in the towns now, not just miles out in the woods and things like that. So it sort of does follow the trend of what would you call it? Not extinction, but borderline rarity. Where it follows that natural trend.
Same with the bears and pumas and stuff like that as well, isn't it? Mountain lions and stuff.
Polar bears in northern Canada. They have polar bear alerts. But they'll decide the polar bear's wandering down the street and they will have to stay indoors until the police come and scare the polar bear off because they're encroaching.
I've been watching Les Stroud on the Survivor and watching the series he did, Bigfoot, where he does 6 episodes. And I've got to say, some of the audio that he he's hearing out in the forest in the middle of nowhere, you're hearing the sound of quick, like tap tap tap, like tools rocks being tapped together. You're hearing it's the call though. It's that you can tell it's a primate call when you hear the audio. And there's supposedly no primates in North America, and it's definitely primate call. I'm really enjoying that. I haven't watched the whole season yet, but
if you listen to, and they're easy enough to find on the internet, the Sierra sounds recorded in the early 1970s.
Yes, I've heard those.
Listen
is
to
that
the
where they've
Sierra
got
sounds.
the hide in the tree? And and it's like it's all destroyed now and gone. But they used to go out there, didn't they? A group of them back from, was it even earlier than the 70s? Was it from like the 50s onwards? Or
the recordings from 1972 and 1974, I believe.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the Sierra Sound, some of the vocalizations that you hear in that,
I've
you're
heard it.
hearing like five frequencies, almost as if it's a chord being vocalized by a single creature or a single entity. Human beings cannot do that.
No.
There isn't other creatures in the wild that can. Okay, granted, on some of the Sierra Sounds, you're actually hearing deer and moose and things like that.
Oh, yeah,
You
obviously.
know, you're hearing normal mammals, but some of the vocalizations and some of the whoops, yeah. I did the Guito monks. What can sort of like do that intonation where like a ooh type, and this like sounds like the several voices.
It's got a constant echo vibration on their own. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like 5 or 6 tones, reverberation, and there's like 5 or 6 tones in one vocalization and things like that. So the Sierra Sounds are worth listening to for anybody in the side chat who might like to do a little bit of that, you know.
And a little side point to that though, I've spent time in the woods up to no good. There are lots of animals that make terrifying noises. You know, you hear stuff sometimes. You sit there thinking, should I be scared of that? Should I be running from this? Whatever the hell that was. And it's a bird or something. They make horrendous screeching noises.
Go and listen to the Sierra Sounds.
No, I have listened to the Sierra Sounds.
Oh yeah,
they are unusual.
You are talking about a group of guys that just haven't walked out of the city and decided to camp out for a couple of days.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just making the point that stuff does crazy. But yeah, these I know they were country guys and they were hearing something that they'd never heard before.
So let's throw this one out. Everybody likes this time and all that. Let's do it. We've been going nearly 2 hours. So what do we think? And that means us up here, the mystery machine. You guys in the side chat can think what you want. We're the sexy ones. What do we?
I'm sexy. You are.
What do we think?
Feeling sexy.
Always.
I still believe it's true. It's not faked. I just don't think they could have pulled it off back in the day. I really don't. And people have tried to recreate it and done poorly. And there are other Bigfoot sighting videos out there that can't be debunked as well, and they all look very similar to Patty. That's my stamp on it. I believe it's real.
Jamie?
I'm not 100% convinced.
Never 100% convinced on anything. Surely there's always a bit of room for it.
I always have that healthy doubt, just in case I don't like to be conned. Doing the research, I've never believed Bigfoot was real. I've never believed it, mainly because I just think we would have found evidence by now. But we regularly find animals and things that we've thought we've been extinct for millions of years. We regularly occasionally dig up fish that we thought, we thought you were extinct for 6 million years, and we've just caught you in a net. What a surprise! I also hear stories from like when Mount St. Helens went off. Some very strange Bigfoot stories there. That even as far as they were trying to save animals, and one thing was say they probably even possibly netted a Bigfoot. But that was an area that there was a lot of Bigfoot sightings and things. I believe it's possible. There's just so much nonsense on YouTube that I genuinely have asked a few times now and nobody's ever come forward. I would love to speak to somebody that's actually got out there into the woods in North America and done the research. Somebody that's out there, banging on tree stumps and things and genuinely eyewitnesses. I would love to speak to somebody that's actually been out there and done it.
Email Les Stroud.
I was going to say, watch Les Stroud survive Bigfoot series. That's pretty much what he does.
To somebody. If anybody would like to come forward, go to my channel, drop me a message. I would love to speak to you.
I can arrange that because I do and have spoke to people who actually go out there.
If you have a contact, please put them through to me. I would love to. If anyone who's willing to talk to me, I would love to. From a skeptical point of view, I would love to.
I do. Damien? Oh, sorry. Go on, Jamie. I thought you finished, brother.
No. That was it, really. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm not 100% convinced, but I do believe it's possible.
Damien, talk to me, baby.
Yeah, I'd probably. I think, yeah, I'm very much more likely than unlikely to have occurred. There are some things that do. I don't know. Patterson and then his ruse to get Gimlin out there in the first place. What was the ruse about? Was he planning to film Bigfoot? Was he? Did he have some other intentions for taking Gimlin out there that perhaps were nastier, and then they happened to see? I don't know. There's a little bit of doubt because of that niggle, because of that ruse to get Gimlin out there. It just makes me wonder, but definitely leaning far more towards it, like 90+%. 95 maybe even.
Quickly throw this out.
I say Baz has just invited me on a trip to Canada, mate. If you're paying for the flights, I would love to go hiking in Canada.
We just saw that, yeah.
I planned to go to Canada to go hiking, but then I met my wife. It's like
there's sort of theories for the so-called massacre, which are sort of like neglected to mention, but I sort of like them thrown in at the end here. Is that a lumber company hired the people to do it because they were afraid of employees getting attacked by a local Sasquatch population, or had already been harassed by Sasquatch or something like that, and didn't want to deal with them, so they hired these guys to get rid of them. And Patterson knew about that. That was his sole intention. Oil companies for the same kind of thing, looking for oil deposits. And the other one is the government. So let's go into, quickly. The government hired them because the Smithsonian Institute, because we all know what they're like.
I was going to mention the Smithsonian Institute about hiding, supposedly hiding giant bodies for the last 100 years or so from the public.
They wanted to suppress the reality that another species of human is living amongst us. And I suppose the other one is the government wanted to cover up the fact there's interdimensional or transdimensional beings and the knowledge of other dimensions existing, and wanted to keep it separate and unaware from public knowledge. So.
There is a lot of evidence that UFOs and strange lights in the sky and things go hand in hand sometimes with Bigfoot sightings. That there's a Bigfoot sighting, and then somebody says they see lights in the sky. Not for me.
A lot of people believe they're extra dimensional, don't they?
It's Chewbacca's family just visiting from a galaxy far, far away.
From a long time ago.
For me,
it could be.
There is a lot of stories though about loggers refusing to go. As soon as the sun goes down, they go home.
Yeah.
They say
employees of logging companies. Yeah, they won't stay out in the forest after dark. Yeah, they know it's not our territory. Get out.
There's lots of stories about them having boulders lobbed at them and stuff and things from the woods. Just always suddenly trees, boulders just appearing from nowhere and smashing equipment and things. And they never. I've never seen anybody actually logging companies going, it's because of Bigfoot, but they seem to say they're not staying out there. They don't like it.
You don't want to give the reason, because the reason will probably be ridiculed.
Yeah.
I think if you, obviously depending upon the particular tribe or ancestry, I've spoke to several Native American Indian people as well, and I've been lucky in that respect. And to them, this isn't even a discussion whether these things exist.
No,
it's not even up for discussion in any way, shape, or form.
It's like in India when you talk about the gods being humanoid, beings from other planets from their ancient text, the Bhagavad Gita. Again, it's not a question; they just believe that it's fact. They don't. It's only us in the West that interpret it very differently.
I think. So for me, I believe that I don't believe it's faked, obviously, and it's not really about whether the footage is faked so much, but I don't believe the footage is faked. I certainly don't believe it's a human being in a suit walking around. There's too many things that go against it being a person in a suit. The actual physiology, the movement of it, which people choose to ignore and just go, it's fake. For people who just automatically naysay that, they haven't done the research at all. When you study the subject and you study cryptozoology and you start to see the similarities around the world and the lack of communication between the people that investigate it for fear of ridicule, which is unfortunate. We see that in ufology. We see it in so many different other subjects, don't we? But for me, this is video footage that will stand the test of time of something that looks like a hairy bipedal creature walking up a dried creek bed, and we can't explain what it is. We don't know what it is. For me, it's good footage, and it'll always be interesting. But it's certainly not a man in a suit. I refuse to accept it's a man in a suit. What it is, I don't know.
Agreed.
I'm not 100% convinced. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just think it could be a man in a suit. The thing is, my argument would be that could you fake this with enough effort, and if somebody was clever, if somebody came up with some clever solution,
absolutely you could. And the thing about it is, what I see is when I see like kids these days complaining about like computer games, like you try to show them a computer game that I played when I was a kid, and they can't stomach it. It's blocky, the graphics are crap, there's very little in the way of controls. They actually think it's really pathetic. And it's like, well, when I played it when I was young, this was the height of technology. It was great, but couldn't possibly imagine what will be going on now. And the fact of the matter is, the technology just wasn't around at the time. Not only not to fake the actual footage itself, but to make a suit that convincing, and to follow the musculature and follow the definition and the contours of the body at that height with those dimensions, the length of the arms in comparison to the knees and the hips. There's just it's not a guy in a suit. I'd rather accept that it was an alien being walking around in the suit, because at least they might match the proportions. But a human, I don't know.
I tell you what, doing the research for this show, I'm more convinced than I was. I think there's more to it than I believed before, because I think I made assumptions about it. There are things about this I can't explain.
Very noble of you to say so.
Well, I'm a noble person.
So, can you give us any kind of insight, you or the cheeky monkey at the side of you, what we've got in store for us next week on the delectable dish of Mystery Machine?
I think we actually have a choice. And if everybody want to jump in and tell us what you want, we can do either. So we're thinking either the Travis Walton fire in the sky incident, if we want to go back and do a little bit of UFO, a slightly more convincing abduction story possibly than what we did last week with Betty and Barney Hill. Or there's the missing flight MH370.
Okay. Gordon, yes. Annalise, Michelle, yes. We can do that. I'll make sure of it. If it falls on when it falls on, I'll do it. I'll do that. So we've got Travis Walton, MH370. What was the other one, brother?
No, that was it. Those are the two. So if anybody's got a choice, please let us know. How about you guys? Have you got a choice? Have you got a preference?
Amazing.
Because we're a documentary. We're a documentary. Democracy.
That is exactly what we are. That is exactly what we are. We're a documentary democracy here, people.
We're a democracy.
I've just had my turn, so it shouldn't really be for me to say, well, MH370 sounds...
A democracy of four never gets anything done, though, does it? Because more often than not, you're either going to get 25, 50 or 75% of the vote. And only one of those works in a democracy, which is 75.
I think MH370. To try, to try and come away from like always doing stuff about UFOs and space, which won't please Steve too much. But always doing UFOs and
to be fair though, with
it's
the
always
aliens story, aliens might.
It is always aliens.
Yeah, absolutely. Aliens could have been dry. It's aliens who placed Bigfoot in the creek. We just didn't cover that particular aspect.
No, exactly. How long was disclosure, Jamie? Anyway, that's coming soon, isn't it? As well after.
That's not coming. Don't talk nonsense. They've already released a thing that they've said that there's. They know what it isn't.
Yeah, it's not.
Definitely know it's not
alien origin. Yeah, of course it's not.
Don't know what it's
Russian or Chinese. Yeah, right. Hypersonic super secret weapons.
thing I do think with it's interesting that men in suits seem to get involved in some of these abduction cases where Sasquatch type creatures are potentially seen, like Keith Park, running into the woods in the missing 411. I forget where I'm going with this point, but with it seems. I'm trying to think where I was going with this, but I'll tell you what, I'll come back to it as soon as I remember.
Everybody in the side chat, welcome to a Damianism. You've just that's what you've just said.
I had something that I was off on a tangent, but no.
That's,
he went off on that much of
brain fart.
He went off on that much of a tangent. He lost himself. I love it.
Yeah. Baz has just mentioned about doing a time travel episode, and we should definitely do that. There's so many different ways we could come at that.
Last Wednesday, yeah.
We'll do a time travel episode last Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Nice, very good.
Very quick. A couple of people have sort of like, so in response to that, we've had one person say Travis Walton, really, and two people have sort of alluded to the missing plane one, and then a quick retraction saying, but they both sound interesting. Stick to your guns, girl. Make your decision. But either way,
MH370 is decided. I'm making an executive decision. Damn it.
There you go, MH370.
Next week.
Indeed, MH370.
On our channel, on A Brief History of Mystery next week.
Oh, thank you for the donation, Nelly. Appreciate you very much. So, yes, same time, same back channel. Doesn't really work that because we're on a different one. But Brief History Brief History of Mystery. These delicious creatures are doing what they've just said. MH370s. Subscribe to them. Give them a good lick. Anybody want to add anything?
No, I'd just like to say thanks to everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Yeah, loved it.
See you all next week.
And lovely to see
you. The chat people.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love these guys. To an extent, that's probably criminal. So thanks very much for coming, everybody in the side chat, and obviously I want to say
I'll just give you a kiss, Dave.
Yeah, sorry, I was miles away. Big old grope to the side of the screen. Big thanks to Steve, Stranger Times. Please, if you're not already subscribed to his channel, go and subscribe to Steve. Big thanks to Jamie, the Walking Thunder Chunky. He's done a great job as always. So, Brief History of Mystery, please sub there too. And a big thanks to Damian. Thanks to everybody in the side chat. Really appreciate you all being here. You're all really, really funky and cool. Peace out.
I bet Dave has a monkey suit somewhere.
I've just seen that at the bottom of the chart, yeah.
Probably does.
I bet you're absolutely right. So
next week, Dave, next week.
Next week, yeah. I could wear it for the stream. I should have worn it for this one, really, though, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I should have done.
Go out in a bang. Okay, guys, see you next week on A Brief History of Mystery, 9 o'clock Wednesday. Make sure that you're there. So sub to the channel so you get all the notifications. They have some really good content, especially when I'm on. And they have other stuff that they talk about when I'm not, which is pretty boring. But it's mediocre at best. So go and sub to Strange Times and go and sub to Brief History and Mystery, please, everybody. And thanks for being here. Do you want to say out, guys, before I pull the plug?
Thanks very much, chat people. Love you all. Bigfoot's real.
Bigfoot might be real. Couldn't help myself, sorry.
That were great. Then enjoy the last word.
Yeah. I'll just say thanks once again, and look forward to next week.
Ron Weasley.
Yeah, and remember, don't let the sound of your own wheels turning drive you crazy. See you later, guys. Be good.
Take care.